I've had access to the new iPad Pro now for about 3 months, and in that time, it has become my favorite computer I've ever used in all of history. And I've been using computers since I was small, like really small, back like we're talking Windows 95 days, people. If you're new to the channel, you may not know this, but I work entirely from my iPad for all my workflows, for everything that I do, editing these videos, photos, audio, administrative tasks, running my business, all of that stuff happens from my iPad. And the upgrades in this version of the iPad Pro have been huge for me, and I'm going to kind of work through that. But I did an initial review about 3 months ago when the iPad Pro was released. I stand by everything that's in that video. I will link to it in the description below. I'm not going to rehash what was in that video, so if you've already seen it, it's not going to be a repeat of that video. But in the 3 months that I've been using this iPad, I've gathered some more notes, some more thoughts on this device that I want to share with you all. The biggest upgrade for me, at least, has been the M1 chip in the iPad Pro. Now, everyone's just gone nuts over Apple's CPUs and GPUs. They're great, and you know, they really are. They're incredibly fast and power efficient, which is kind of a rare combination in the CPU and GPU world. A big part of my workflow is creative stuff. I do a lot of video, photo, and audio editing. Now, all three of those, the exports times for each one of those has been sped up. The export times have been decreased. It exports faster than the previous iPad Pro model. When it comes to batch editing a bunch of photos in Lightroom, it's super easy to just, copy some settings from one photo and then apply it to dozens, if not hundreds of photos and just let it turn through that. It's bonkers fast when it comes to that. And then on the other side, video editing, a lot of little things have been fixed for me using the M1 chip. Because things are faster, I used to have these little hiccups when scrolling through large timelines in LumaFusion. It would like pause for a second, like it was loading more clips in a memory. Thanks to the M1 chip, all of that has been sped up. Those little hiccups have gone away. Those weren't deal breakers. They weren't like world ending bugs, but they were just annoying enough that I really wanted to see them get fixed. And speeding up the hardware seems to have done that. The version of the iPad Pro I have here has 16 gigs of RAM. Now, what that gets you is better multitasking. Apps are able to stay open longer in the background. When you create app pairs and stuff like that, you can constantly just keep jumping through those app pairs. Apps on the iPad are limited to 5 gigabytes of RAM per app, meaning at 5 gigabytes, it caps out. Basically, the app doesn't think the system has any more to use. Now, with iPadOS 15, there's going to be an entitlement. So app developers can, contact Apple and be like, hey, I want to use this entitlement here. And this particular one will allow them to go past that 5 gig limit. So not every app is going to get access to this. It's going to be really special apps. And the way I see it is apps like LumaFusion and Procreate, those big, heavy, creative apps that can use more RAM, that could do more with extra RAM, those are going to be the ones that get access to this entitlement. And I think this is the right way to do it because we don't need messaging apps or email apps or text editor apps using 16 gigs of RAM. They don't need access to that. But pro apps and big, heavy creative apps and development apps and stuff like that can actually use that extra RAM. We have an update coming to Swift Playgrounds later this year that is going to allow you to develop apps from start to finish right from an iPad. And that is something that I think could use that extra RAM space when compiling all that code. Out of all the upgrades to this new iPad Pro, I think Thunderbolt might actually be a niche thing. USB-C is probably fast enough for most people. That's 10 gigabits per second. Thunderbolt 4 clocks in around 40 gigabits per second. So I don't think most people will be taking advantage of that. I think, again, this is something that the creative workflow is really going to appreciate. For me, I move a lot of large files around, whether they're video files or hundreds and hundreds of raw photos, which on my camera come in around about 50 to 70 megs a piece, just depending on some settings. And I'm really happy to see Thunderbolt is here. Now, if you've been following my channel over the summer, you know I've kind of been on this rabbit hole, like deep dive into Thunderbolt devices. And I ended up making what I'm calling Frankenstein's monster of a Thunderbolt dock. This is all OWC stuff. So this is the OWC Thunderbolt Hub, OWC Thunderbolt Dock, and the OWC Envoy Express. So what I did is I put all this stuff together. So the dock is the main thing. The dock plugs into the iPad. Then I have the hub plug into the dock, and I have the Envoy Express plug into the dock. And thanks to Thunderbolt daisy chaining, this works incredibly well. This gives me extra ports that I wouldn't get with just one of those devices or without any of those devices. The Envoy Express is a NVMe storage container. So basically I took the old 2 terabyte NVMe chip out of my previous file server, put it in there, and now that is my archive drive. So I have 2 terabytes of extra storage that anytime I plug my iPad into this dock setup, I can use. Then with the hub, I have an extra 3 Thunderbolt 4 ports, and on the dock, I have 3 USB, 3 Thunderbolt 4, headphone jack, SD card reader, which I use every single day. It is hands down one of the most used ports in this setup, and I'm really happy with this. Now, it was kind of pricey to all put together. If I wasn't doing these videos, I don't think I would do that because of how expensive all that is, like when you put it together. If you can afford that, and if you want all those extra ports, this is a great way of doing it. At the beginning of 2021, I got a M1 Mac Mini, and my purpose for getting this was going to be a file server and an automation server. And I never really ended up doing much on the automation server side. I have some Hazel stuff running. I'm hoping to see a few things come in the fall when Shortcuts officially comes to the Mac, but right now I'm not doing much with the automation side. I was mostly using it for backing up projects, storing finished files, things like that. But now that Thunderbolt is on the iPad and I moved that archive drive to my Thunderbolt Frankenstein dock, I'm not using that Mac Mini anymore. I'm using my iPad for all that archival storage, and I'm just backing it up there. Now, the one downside of using the iPad like this is there is no way to back up that external drive. So if I lose that external drive, it dies on me tomorrow, that stuff is gone. So it's not stuff I'm relying on, it is just stuff I'm backing up to there. So there still needs to be some like backup solution stuff figured out on the iPad. I'm hint working on something, shortcuts related. So stay tuned for that. So this year, the 12.9-inch model got an exclusive feature the 11-inch didn't, and that's the XDR display. Now, I said in my initial review, you have to see it to believe it, and I stand by that. It's such a beautiful display and it looks so good. Every time I look at one of the older iPads and then go and look at this iPad again, it's night and day to me. It's so drastically different. It's amazing. Watching HDR content, whether that's videos or viewing HDR photos, it's fantastic. It gets super bright for the parts that need to be bright, but also can be really dark for the parts that need to be dark. And I'm not talking about in like different scenes. I'm talking like same frame. Like if the top part is supposed to be super bright and the bottom part is supposed to be super dark, the screen can do it. And there's not a lot of displays out there that can really do this and hit this kind of brightness levels that it's hitting. It really makes me want Apple to make a TV because I think a TV with this display tech it would be awesome. So after I published my initial review, there were some people posting about how there's blooming issues on this new display tech. So when I'm just using the device in everyday use, like writing in drafts or an email, editing video, or even watching a movie or something like that, I do not see any issues with blooming. It is not until I open up a pure black background or a pure black image and then have some UI elements over it. That's pretty much the only time I've ever seen the blooming issue. One of my favorite iPad accessories to use with this iPad Pro is the Paperlike. Paperlike is a channel sponsor, and what it is a textured screen protector. So when you're using the Apple Pencil and you're writing on that screen, it feels more like you're using pencil and paper and not that plastic on glass feeling. It just feels a lot nicer to use. So I really like the Paperlike. I use it every single day. I will put my link in the description below so you can check it out. The sleeping giant feature of this release is Center Stage. Basically what this is it uses the new ultra-wide front-facing camera to follow you and track you around, then it crops in and zooms in on wherever you are for video calls. This is a really nice touch. While using center stage is definitely a lot better experience over using the front-facing camera on the previous iPads, there's still some issues. So if you're using it in the Magic Keyboard case, the camera is still too low. People are going to be looking at your chin or worse at your nose hairs, and that's just not a flattering angle at all. So I still have to put my iPad on a stand. Now, when I'm working at my desk back here, I have my iPad on a stand anyways. It's plugged into a monitor. So that's not that big of a deal. On the previous iPads, I used to have to put books underneath the stand to get it to a level height, so it was eye level and a much more flattering position, not looking up at me or not looking down at me. So I would want to get it level. With center stage, I don't have to worry about putting the books underneath the stand anymore. I just start the call and it works its way out. That's just the benefit of having that ultra wide camera and being able to crop. Now, the one issue that I found with center stage is because it's cropping in on its sensor, you're not getting the full resolution of that sensor. It doesn't look terrible, but if you add light or add more light to the setup there, it's gonna look a lot better. So if I do a video call, I'll open this window that's right here. That way I can just get enough light going into the sensor to make everything look a little more crisp. The only accessory released with these new iPad Pros is the white Magic Keyboard. Now, like everyone else, I thought, well, as soon as you take this out of the box, it's gonna get instantly dirty and it'll never look clean again. And I was kind of right. It does get dirty really easily. Over the last few months, I've gotten this thing pretty dirty, but it is fairly easy to clean, so that's not terrible. The issue that I've been having is every scratch, scrape, mark, whatever is so visible on this thing because it's white. And because of that, I prefer the black Magic Keyboard. I really love this iPad Pro. It's been a huge improvement to my workflow. Like I talked about, the M1 chip has made things faster. Thunderbolt has made things faster. The new display is great for color correcting, editing photos, watching movies or TV shows. Center stage has been super helpful for, video calls and things like that. If you're interested in starting to work from the iPad, this is a great place to start. Now, my go-to iPad is the 12.9-inch one because it is my main device. I use it as a laptop a lot, but then I can pop it out and use it as a tablet when I want to. But if you're looking for something more portable, a lot lighter than the 12.9-inch one, the 11-inch model is a great way to go as well. iPadOS 15 will be out in the fall, and now I'm working on a huge walkthrough for this video. I do one every year for every version of iPadOS, and this is one of my favorite videos to make. It's gonna cover everything, all the new multitasking stuff, global keyboard shortcuts, all sorts of really cool things. So be sure to subscribe if you wanna check that out. Thank you all so much for watching, and have a great day.